All right, Jeff, here's where I'm at. I spent a lot of time last night thinking about this because I think we've seen a lot of sides of Dan Campbell. And where I want to start with is the story, right? Going into this year, what did all of you ask for? And of course, I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for all of you. I asked for 7-10. With the expectation that, you know, if they won 8 or 9, it wouldn't surprise me. Because I think this team is more talented than you, including all of you watching, gave them credit for. Cool. Season starts, and Dan Campbell is 1-6. Team is 1-6. 4-19-1, I believe, at the time overall. Not looking good. No direction, no clear sight. Making mistake after mistake after mistake, and the same mistake after same mistake after same mistake. Throwing games in the fourth quarter, clock management, poor use of timeouts, greedy going into halftime, greedy coming out, onside kicks, bad timeouts, giving teams extra possessions, whatever it was, he was doing it. And I had zero patience for it. I didn't like it at all. This was a team I think we all agreed with at the time. I don't just think, I know we all agreed with at the time. We all believed their record was not a clear indication of their 1, performance, and 2, quality/potential. Cool. Now that I've laid out the first 7 games, and I have told you that I thought it was a joke, and that it was pathetic, and that Dan was on the hot seat for it, we can move on from that and say that over the last 5 games, Dan Campbell and his staff have turned it around. Dan Campbell and his staff and his players have turned it around. They are playing at a much higher level. They are coaching, I would say, at a much higher level. And more importantly than anything, they've gotten out of the way. What do I mean by that? Jeff, if I go through the schedule right now, and I list you off all these games, and you tell me what was the headline after it, okay? Let's play this game a little bit. 38-35, Eagles beat the Lions week 1. What's the headline?
Well, at the time, it was Lions kind of had some questionable calls in
well,
that game.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking. Give me straightforward answers. The timeout, the onside kick, whatever it was.
That was the headline coming out of that
Lions
game.
beat the Commanders 36-27.
That was complete domination.
Thank you. Right, 1-1, looking good. 28-24 loss on the road to Minnesota.
That blown defensive assignment at the end. That was it.
And the 4th down decision.
Yeah, early on, yeah.
All right, I want you to see the theme here. 48-45 against the Seahawks. Couldn't force a single punt.
Not one punt. But Jared Goff also threw a pick 6.
Yeah,
so it doesn't help.
If that's the reason they lost, then what do I know?
No, it's more importantly the punt.
Patriots 29, Lions 0.
Yeah, offense gets shut out. Early on, they go for it 4th and 9 when they're down 6-0. It was ugly.
Cowboys 24, Lions 6. First half impressive, second half.
The fourth quarter meltdown.
5 turnovers in the second half.
Yeah.
8 penalties coming off a bye week. Undisciplined football team.
Yeah.
They're spotted 14 points against the Miami Dolphins, and they lose 31-27.
Second half adjustments. Failed to do that.
Up until that point, you're 1-6. And what is the common theme in almost every single game? Coaching decisions, coaching mistakes, questionable calls, questionable timeouts, whatever it was, that was 1-6. And since then, whether it was the Packers, whether it was the Bears, whether it was the Giants, the Bills, and now more recently the Jaguars, you've seen a complete football game. Most games, you've seen a team that played consistently for 4 quarters. Now, did they make the same mistake? Well, let me backtrack. They've won 4 of their last 5, Jeff. What is the one single game they've lost? What is that? What was the headline after?
On Thanksgiving to the Bills.
What was the headline?
Giving Josh Allen, leaving him too much time before half, and that 3rd and 1 call.
Okay.
The big debate,
So,
giving him time at the end.
Have you seen the theme when this team loses? What happens? Are you catching a little bit of my drift here?
Yeah, it's mistakes.
And I'm not saying it's definitive, it's outright, but that's just the data.
Right.
When you lose games this year, it's not because, man, they made one more play than we did, or, you know, they just played better that day. It's the common thing is coaching decisions. And 4 of the last 5 games, you've won 4 of them. 4 of which you have not questioned your coaching decisions at all, regardless of if they made it or not. And the one game you lost, what do you know? Before halftime, and of course the final drive of the game.
Mm-hmm.
The common theme with this team right now is that when they win, the headline isn't about the coaches. It's about the team. But for some reason when they lose, and I'm not saying this headline is media written. It's it's what happened in the game. But when they lose, it is because of a decision, multiple decisions, poor use of clock, or game management. It's always something. And I'm not sure how we feel about that. So you ask me to the question, where do you stand with Dan Campbell? I told you guys last year by Thanksgiving I would know. And I really thought I had a good pulse. And then they've won 4 or 5 now. And I'm seeing Dan win the way we had a conversation about last year in Arizona when they beat the Cardinals at Ford Field. That was repeatable success. And now you're seeing over the last 5 weeks, they're playing consistent ball. 4-1, they've played consistent the last 5 weeks. So now I'm in a position thinking to myself, okay, I like him. Love the attitude, love his mantra, love his bravado, whatever you want to call it. Drives me nuts with his coaching decisions. I don't like them at all. So there's parts I like, and then there's parts I really don't like. And where I'm at today is where I was at before the season. Because I just don't know. I have a certain level of optimism that I had going into the season because of this 5-game stretch. But it's also very difficult for me to just forget about 1-6, forget about Buffalo, forget about Minnesota, forget about Philly, forget about Miami. It's difficult, which is why I don't have the answer. I don't have the clear 100% answer. If you were somebody that said when they were 1-6, we believe in Dan Campbell, I believe in him, you had no statistical data, you had no evidence whatsoever that they would be able to win 4 of their next 5 games. None. That would have been, quote, your feeling. But this game is not about feelings. It is about evidence. It is about what you've proven on and off the field.
Right.
And up until those 7 games, boy, they didn't prove much. And I was out. I was fed up. And then they've strung along these 5 games, Jeff, where you're like, repeatable performance, repeatable, even though they blew it at the end, but repeatable. And now I'm thinking to myself, okay, if he can just do this is going to be a tough football team to beat. But then I try not to get too ahead of myself and say, okay, well, when this team is uber talented, Jeff, how will he manage them? How will we coach them? I don't want to get that far ahead because I don't have the answers yet. And I don't like not having the answers. I'm very paranoid about that. I think you can all agree he's changed the culture, right? But you can't change it legitimately until you win. And you suddenly see the pep in everybody's step now in Ford Field. And now you're seeing the pep in the fan base, really. They're all walking around feeling great. Winners of 4 of 5, favored against Minnesota, great. There's a lot to play for still. But that's where I'm at with Dan. I'm where I was before the season, which is I don't know yet. I just don't know. And I don't want to lie and say I do know, because I don't. Because at 1-6, I thought I did know. I really did. I thought I was 100% certain this isn't going to work out. Trade T.J. Hawkinson, fire Aubrey Pleasant. And now they've won 4 of 5. And I'm sitting here thinking, dude, where the hell was this? You've avoided making mistakes for 5 games. 4 of the last 5 games, and you're 4-1. Surprise. So should I give you credit for that, or should I be frustrated with you for that? I'm not sure. I just know that if I'm going to not give you credit, if I'm going to criticize you, Jeff, when you're 1-6, I think I have to be honest and give you credit when you've won 4 of 5. That doesn't get you out of the clear. That doesn't make you a successful coach. You're still 8-20-1 overall. But I can see how they win football games. This is what we talked about in Arizona. You know how much of an asshole I was all last year. I was so out all year. And then Arizona happened. And what did we have the conversation about? That was repeatable. That was a formula for success I can actually visually see them doing in the future. And in the last 4 out of the last 5 games, very similar to what they did in Arizona, except their passing game is much more effective. That's where I stand this morning, Jeff.
And I do agree with you. I think there's more context, but with Dan Campbell, one thing I can give him credit for, there's multiple things, but one I'll start with is even through the 1-6 start, these players never quit. And he even said this in the presser after the Jags game. He never had, or at least lost faith in what he had, the talent he had on this football team. And you talk about what's changed from now, looking at it earlier in the year when they were 1-6. To me, yeah, Dan Campbell staying out of his own way. Dan Campbell actually improving and learning on the job, which isn't ideal, but you can give credit for Dan because he has improved as a head coach. And the fact that he can actually trust his defense lately, you're looking at the last couple games, looking at their last, winning 4 out of the last 5 games. Just look at what they've held opponents to. I mean, you look at the Jags, 14 points. The Bills, 28 points, which, again, you lost that game by a field goal. You look at before the Giants. On the road, you hold them to 18 points. The Bears game, Justin Fields was a complete menace. That's kind of an isolated situation. But the Packers, 9 points. What's changed as well is this defense is playing better. Guys are getting better. And when you have a defense that's filled with young guys, especially early in the year, how bad they were playing, talking about Seattle not forcing a punt, that's the difference. And Dan not being able to trust this defense. Now it's different. Now you don't have to go for it on 4th down. Now you can settle for field goals because you know what your defense is going to do. They've been performing. They've been at least – it hasn't been the most dominant defense, but it's more of a bend, don't break. And they've shown that over the last couple weeks. And the offense, clearly, they've bounced back as well, even on the road. But to your point about Dan Campbell, what he's done over the last 5 games, and this is talking about the 1-6 start versus winning 4 out of the last 5. This is the way you're going to win games with Dan, right? These players, how they game plan, how he's managed his assistant coaches, which I think he deserves a ton of credit for because we were criticizing AG early in the year, never gave up on him. AG responded. This defense has been playing great football over the last couple weeks. You talk about his hirings even before the season, the staff he's been able to assemble. You fire Aubrey Pleasant, and to be honest with you, the initial thought, for me at least, thought he was a scapegoat. But this team has responded. The secondary's responded. And more than that, Ben Johnson. You look at their offense at times, not showing up in the second half. Well, they've done that. And again, for Dan Campbell's sake, where I'm at on him, I think he's given me more confidence, obviously, the last 5 games than he did at the 1-6 start. Now, is he the long-term answer? I think I need more time to see that. But what I've seen so far is there is a formula here for winning games.
And
I truly but more so lately it's been winning.
I understand.
So so we can't hold him, and I get where you're coming from. Early in the season they're 1-6, but you got to look at what they've been doing recently. Now, down the stretch, if there's performances where he's costing them more games, I'm willing to have that conversation. But it seems like he's learned from those mistakes over the last 5 weeks. So
you're telling me he's actually valued field goals and punting, and they're suddenly winning?
Yes.
Come on, Jeff.
And players
this isn't rocket
and the defense isn't playing better.
Yes. Well, the defense always will play better when you're not fucking making them start at their own 33-yard line.
I mean, they've been terrible though.
I understand.
You can't just blame him because he goes for it on 4th down.
I'm not, but it is part of the story. It's not all of it, but it is part of it. But yes, the defense has been so much better. They've been able to stop the run more effectively. The pass coverage, they've had one of the better pass defenses in the NFL over the last 5 games. That is a fact. I believe top 10. So, yeah, it is a story of both sides. And through how many games are we in now? 12? Through 12 games this year, you've shown me you know how to win games now, and you know how to lose them.
Right.
Which one are you going to do more often moving forward? That's the question I have.
2 things, and again, I get where you're coming from, but you can't deny 2 things that have changed. Number one, we're talking about the defense, how better they've been playing. Credit to AG. But another part of that is they have a consistent kicker. Like that was the problem earlier in the year. Is not trusting your defense,
They signed Badgley
and he's been excellent.
the week after he went 4 for 4 in Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't use him in a game that they barely lost.
Oh, wait, Chicago.
Please.
They beat Chicago.
No. We're not talking about Chicago here.
What
He was in Chicago the week prior,
yeah.
2 weeks prior to that game.
Mm-hmm.
They signed him coming off a 4 for 4 game, and they didn't use him at all. Again, maybe he's learning.
Which isn't ideal.
I don't hire you to learn on the job. Having said that, I'm willing to be patient. Quote the word patient. When you give me reasons to. At 1-6, you don't give me much ammunition to work with here, buddy. If winner's a 4 or 5, take my foot off your throat.
Right.
And I gotta acknowledge the good you have done.